Welcome to the June meeting of Parsec. Parsec is a 501c3 nonprofit organization promoting science fiction, fantasy, and horror in literature, media, and music for over 30 years. Our mission is to promote awareness of the richness of speculative fiction as literature, art, and music, further general education in the sciences and arts, support contributions, both scientific and artistic, to society, and to espouse the enjoyment of speculative fiction as literature, art, and music with others. Our program. In June this month, our special guest is from Nigeria. Somto Ihezue is a Nigerian Igbo writer joining us from overseas. Somto was awarded the 2021 African Youth Network Movement Fiction Prize. You can read poems by Somto by poetryfoundation.org or in poetryfoundation.org, All the Stones That Built Me. And there's a story by Somto at DreamForge Anvil, like Stars Daring to Shine, which is a reprint from Fireside magazine. So before we start with that program, we're going to do some Parsec news. Now, all the links mentioned in the following announcements will be copied into the chat on Zoom, so watch for them after we complete our announcements. Parsec meetings are always free to attend and open to the public. Support us by becoming a member. Dues are only $30 a year. Add $10 for each associate voting membership in the same household, and you can sign up at the link that we will provide in the chat. I think we're ready to start our program. So I'm going to read a little bit more about Somto, and then we're just going to start talking. So Somto was awarded the 2021 African Youth Network Movement Fiction Prize, a NOMO Award nominee and a finalist for the 2022 Afritondo Prize. His works have appeared in Tor.com, Africa Risen Anthology, Fireside Magazine, Poetry Magazine, Cosmas Infinities, Flash Fiction Online, Africa in Dialogue, On Spec, Omanana Magazine, and others, including DreamForge Magazine. Somto is an alumnus of Milford SF Writers 22, Voodoo Knots 22, and will be attending the Clarion West 2023 6-week summer workshop, which will take place from June 25th to August 5th. So that's coming up real soon. He is a member of SFWA, BSFA, BFS, ASFS, and Codex, and is an associate editor with Android Press, Apex Magazine, and Cast of Wonders. And he tweets at Somto_Ihezue. I'll spell that last name, Ihezue. His story, like Stars Daring to Shine, can be found in DreamForge issue 11. We'll give you a link for that. And you can read a poem by Somto at the poetryfoundation.org, All the Stones That Built Me. And that's our introduction. So Somto, welcome. Why don't you just say hello?
Thank you so much, guys, for having me here. It's really great to be here amongst everyone.
Well, I'm going to start with some questions, and I want everyone to feel free as you get warmed up. Just chime in, like raise your hand or whatever. Just unmute and ask a question. But I'll give it a start. So, Somto, great having you here with us today. We really appreciate it. We hope to get to know you better. And as Kevin said, we hope you'll submit some stuff to our anthologies and that sort of thing in the future. And you're always welcome to submit to DreamForge. My question is, how do you think your Nigerian Igbo heritage has influenced your writing, like your background? How does that influence how you talk about science fiction?
Okay, so I think I should start by saying that I might be having breaks in my network in case anyone's able to hear me at some point. Yeah, okay. I think my heritage has really been the backbone of my writing process in general, because that's as far back as I can remember growing up, the stories we heard and the stories we were being told, the culture, the people, they basically informed my writing. They basically influenced my writing. And even up until now, when I tell the stories that I tell, I always go back to highlight some stuff from where, or borrow stuff to add to the fiction. So most times tend to see real events or real or things back from my heritage outlined in the stories as well. So it's not always fiction. There's some actual real life details in the works as well. So yeah, I think I think my heritage has massively influenced my writing in so many ways.
Well, I think what you're saying there, as far as bringing your real life into it, I think that's what brings richness to fiction anyway. And if you bring that richness in, and then add to that the imaginative spark of talking about how things might be in the future, I think that's actually what brings the engagement spark that really makes stories interesting. So obviously, yes. I said we just in DreamForge, we published as a reprint your story, like Stars Daring to Shine. Let's talk about that background and real life influence, and what influenced that story. What inspired like Stars Daring to Shine?
I think for like Stars Daring to Shine, it was basically more like the global phenomenon of climate change and how it's affecting the entire world in general. And even down here, I think you get to see different effects across different countries or different environments, depending on their biome or their natural. Yeah. So the effects here in Nigeria start to get very noticeable. Things are getting pretty hot. The harvest yields aren't as bountiful as they used to be, and a lot of other stuff. And in environments or in states where there's oil reserves or oil-rich states, it gets really terrible down there. The water is oil infested. The water is just bad. The air is unbreathable, and the oil exploitation just keeps going. It's not the chaos it's inflicting on the environment isn't even being taken into consideration. People just keep mining the oil like nothing's even happening. So I don't live in those areas, but it's really bad in those areas. It's really bad, and most times it's out the riverine areas, and you get to see that those people rely on fishing, most of the fishing villages, and then all the fishes are dead. The water is basically black. The air, you just can't even breathe the air, but people still live there. And so it's just the whole climate change, what's going on in our environment, and that really influenced the story, trying to see what our community could look like in the future and how we can try and take things back and how things could possibly be better in the future. So yeah, that was really what influenced the story. Yeah.
What I appreciated about the story as an editor is that you could easily take that story, the grimness and the darkness of that story, and basically end it as a tragedy, where you're basically saying, and humanity destroyed itself. And you didn't do that. You basically showed it's like things have gotten really bad, but at the core, there's going to be a community that fights back against this, and that there will be people who try to bring the ecology back, and then you show it through the eyes of essentially children who are there to see that the world is starting to come back. So it has a very hopeful ending, which I really appreciated, which is why I wanted to publish it. So I really appreciated that even with all the terrible things you just told us about, you still have hope that as a global community we'll get past where we're at right now.
Yeah, I was really going for a hopeful end to that story. There's a lot of grimness already in the world. I think it's okay to still tell that grimness, to still have the grimness in stories, to still have as a reminder that this is what's happening, this is what's on the ground, this is the environment we live in. Yes, that is necessary to still tell those stories as well. At the same time, it's also, we need to create more kinder and more hopeful futures as well. And telling this kind of stories that have hope, stories that give hope, or stories that imagine a better future, in the same vein, I think that's also very important as well for us in general. Yeah.
Well, when I read off your bio, that you have a lot of accomplishments and that sort of thing. And let's just start with one, like your experience winning the 2021 African Youth Network Movement Fiction Prize. Like how has that impacted your career? Was that something that really got you started, or what came out of that, and how does that even work?
Yeah, that was actually what basically kick-started my writing. That was during the COVID period, and there was a contest for stories that center or that exist during the peak of the COVID-19 situation, COVID-19 pandemic. So I entered for that, and I got to find out that I won the award. It was really massive. It was a really big deal, and I think that was one of the very first stories I've ever written, or if not the first story I've written. It was a really short story, it was just about the COVID, and we also had stuff to do with like climate change as well. Because I remember that during the COVID period, we got to see nature coming back in its own way. Yeah, we got to see that as well. I think I saw some videos in the US where you see deers in the streets and wild animals just coming out and just walking about. Also here, we got to see stuff like that as well. You get to see animals that would normally not be out, just out and about, because there are no humans to like stop them and stuff like that. So yeah, that story basically centered that as well. I fed off of nature reclaiming its space in the absence of us. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. But at the same time, yeah, I just tried to with that story, I just mirrored our environment at that time. And then I submitted to the award, and I won the award, and it was really, really great. And it just really like pushed me to keep on writing. It really like, yeah, if I could do this, then I could probably write more of this. I never thought I could write fiction. I thought it was something some kind of people do. Like, it just felt so massive, this big thing. And after that, just with that one experience, I just felt like I could probably do more of this, and I have been writing ever since. So yeah, it was a turning point for me. It really helped my writing develop and grow. So yeah.
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead, Jane.
With that Clarion coming up, what do you know about that so far, and how excited are you about that? It seems like you're saying you thought writing was something somebody else did, where other people could do. And what does it feel like now to be going to Clarion? It's one of the premier workshops.
Well, so when I sent my bio, I was supposed to correct my bio because I'm actually going for Clarion next year.
Next year,
okay.
Yeah. I was supposed to attend this year, but I have a program in Nigeria and there's a clash, so I'm trying to go for next year. But yeah, for Clarion as well, it was also a really massive deal too. I just sent in, when the applications opened, I sent in, and I remembered when I got an email and they said they'd like to talk with me. I thought it was an interview. So I went to read up on Clarion West and the people who organized Clarion West. So in case they ask me those things, I'll be able to answer those questions. So I went to read up on the organization, and when it started and who founded it, was a lot. I had like an entire paper with me so I could just quickly answer the questions. But it was just an interview to tell me that they invited me to be a part of Clarion West. So yeah, that was also a really massive deal for me as well. Just being able to be a part of a group of amazing writers from across the world, that was really, really cool. That was really, really cool. So yeah, like I said, at first I didn't think writing was something. I saw books and I felt like all these writers are just big writers from, I don't know, space or something. And it just felt like this massive accomplishment. which it is. Us being writers, it's a massive thing. The toll and the creativity and all of that is just, it's wild, the things we create. So yeah, Carry On West also too was a big deal. It is a big deal, and I'm just glad to be a part of that as well.
I just
that'll be this time next year. You'll be coming then.
I have one follow up there. It sounds as you're talking as though writing is almost like a new, you weren't considering it necessarily as something you really wanted to focus on. Lots of times around here, if you have a writer who's doing the things that you're doing, they might have been writing since a very young age, and they're just starting to find their voice, and that's where it almost sounds like you just wrote your first story and had amazing success with it. Tell me a little bit about that. Have you written all your life, or is this just really new to you?
I've actually, I think I've written all my life. I think what's new to me is the publishing part of it. That's entirely what's new to me. I think as earlier on as I can remember, back in school, we had all this tiny essays and wrote stuff at the back of our notebooks. So yeah, there was that. I think most writers also have that experience of having all those tiny moments growing up. I think the new part of it is the publishing part. I never thought the publishing part was in the works for me. So as much as I did grow up having that creative mindset in a way, the publishing part of it is entirely new to me. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. Yeah.
Yes, it does. Which leads to the next one. It's like, so at this point, your works have appeared in quite a range of publications. Do you like one of the things that might be typical for someone trying to do that is adapting their writing style to suit the various publications? Have you found yourself like actually examining publications, saying, I know what they want, I'm going to write for them? Or are you just writing, really what you feel in your heart and sending it out, and it's just having a great reception? So where do you fall in that? Do you find yourself adapting your stories for particular publications?
Yeah, I didn't do that. I did see that, I usually see when I come across submission guidelines, which I guess is cool because some magazines have what works for them. But I usually don't, I don't fold. I just write whatever I want to write, whatever feels right to me at that point in time, whatever story I want to tell. So I just, whatever feels right at the time, whatever I feel is going to be impactful at the time or feels good to me. Sometimes I also write for myself too. And I just go ahead and write that. Hope someone out there sees it and likes it. And there's some stories I've written, and by the time I'm done with it, I just hope no one publishes it, because I'll be like, maybe I didn't really think this one through, or maybe I don't know, maybe it's too different. And someone picks it up and someone really likes it, and I'm like, oh wow, I guess that works too. So there is that, yeah. So I basically write although I think I need to start being more, I don't know, I think I need to be more intentional about it. I don't know if that's something I need to start being, but for now, I just go ahead with whatever comes to my mind and just go along with it, yeah.
Well, that bodes really well, I think, for you, because that means your talent is really showing through. And as you become more professional, especially as you get through things like Clarion, you're just going to be more and more professional and able to really target exactly what you want to do. So that's really cool. Do we have any questions from our group yet? Anybody want to chime in?
I'll just jump in and say, first of all, Somto, I'm so excited to hear you speak, and what you're talking about with writing hopeful climate stories is very much my language. I love writing those as well. And so I recently actually wrote a column about solar punk and how solar punk looks different in Nigeria than it would in New York. And because I really believe that every place has its own strengths and its own challenges. And so the solutions are going to look different. in different places. And so I'm very curious to hear from you. What stories are calling to you right now? Where do you find yourself being pulled creatively to write? I'm just curious if you've had so much success so far, but what's calling you right now?
Oh, I'd say, well, I think I'm generally being pulled in so many directions. But at the core of it, I still find myself navigating stories of the particular kind of stories. But back here in Nigeria, we talk about ways of recycling, and I'm looking for the words to use for it. There are certain stories which can appear to look like fantasy stories, and they feel like they're mythologies and stuff like that. But when you look at the world, or when you look at the Nigerian society, you tend to see how those stories, which are meant to be fantasy, are actually real stories, which are actually the lived experiences of people, where you see certain deities and how they affect maybe the weather or the climate, and then you see in the real world, those things that are believed to be faith or myth are just interconnected with science at the same time. So it's a whole. I've really been playing with those ideas in my head for a long time. How the culture and the traditions, how they intersect with the modern world, how they blend into the modern world, how you still get to see that meets at a certain point, and you see, well, wow, this is really not just mythology. It's more than that. It's actually, and you get to see the thread all the way from myths to science, and I've really been playing with such ideas for some time now. I'm hoping to have such stories out in the world soon. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Please write those things. I will absolutely read those.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love the idea of getting us to understand other cultures. And, in the US, we get so stuck on our own that hearing actual voices from other people talking about their cultures is really important. You said before about sometimes you write a story and you're like, I'm not sure where this one went, or I'm not sure, but other people like it. So do you have like a circle of readers or a writers group that you belong to that you can bounce your ideas off of when you think, hey, it didn't work, but other people do?
Yeah, definitely. I do have mostly friends who who bounce off ideas of each other and our stories of each other. I usually mostly people from all over the place, because I guess it's the audience is the world, so I like to see opinions from everybody, wherever the person is. I just like to see different and varying opinions on the works and how different people from different backgrounds would interpret said stories. So have like a codex. There is codex, and there are really supportive groups on codex, and most times just basically friends who I met on Twitter, like Marie. Marie has an amazing story on Clarkswell, which I read and really, really loved, and I tell everybody about it. And I just sent to it. Yeah. Sorry, I went off track there.
No, that's great.
But yeah, Codex is cool.
Writers supporting writers. That's what it's about. Sorry.
That's okay. Marie, did you have something? Come on.
No, I mean, I wanted to see Somto in the face. So I'm excited to come to this meeting.
Hi, Marie.
Hi.
Yeah. I read a story by Marie. We built the city on Clarkswell, and I cried. I did cry. It was amazing. It was so good. And it was a novelette, so at first I was a bit skeptical about, could I finish the story? It's quite long. and I didn't stop at any point. It was just the most amazing thing I have ever read. I just keep telling everyone about it. It's you guys have to read it. It's amazing. It's just wonderful. It's
I'm
just the
making
most
a note.
wonderful.
Put the title in the in the chat.
I can link it.
Yeah.
But you're being too modest. We're here to talk about your stories.
No, it's just I saw Marie pop up. I was like, oh, Marie, I just remember the story all over again, and I keep thinking about it all the time. You guys have to read it. It's We Built This City, and the most amazing title too. It's just awesome. It's just awesome.
Thank you. But yeah, so I'm trying to think of a good question now about how difficult is it dealing with, the publishing world, which is so heavily centered in like New York and London and English language, and frequently like 1 or 2 time zones, right? Is it problematic, or is it pretty much okay since everything's online just to submit it whenever?
Yeah, I think I've been lucky to start publishing at a time where most things are more online or things are more technologically advanced now. I think most other Nigerian or African writers who started writing before me really had a very hard time with publishing when it was more physical. And I've spoken to a lot of older writers, and they're like,
Yeah, when they used to actually like have to meet editors and stuff, and now everything is just send an email.
Sorry. No, I think I'm having my network is breaking. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Yes, I hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I think things are easier now. There's the access now to be able to send stories from wherever you are in the world to magazines all over the place. And so I think for that part of the publishing process, I think it's that part of the publishing process has really made things easier. So we have even here I always send links to upcoming Nigerian writers, submission links, send your stories here, send your stories everywhere. The world, people want to read your stories. The world wants to read your story. Just send your stories out there. So yeah, when it comes to that part of the publication process, things are really shaping up on that front.
I'm making a note. So who wants to ask the next question?
Okay, I got it. What are the writers that, like, who did you grow up reading, and what kind of stories did you grow up reading? Like, what is it that you go to for enjoyment and for inspiration?
Well, I think apart from the normal the oral stories I got to hear from family, from grandparents, from parents, there was actually the fact that I actually grew up watching a lot of Western media. And it was only until watching those or reading this kind of stuff, it's always hard to envision yourself in those kind of stories when they have blue eyes and blonde hair. I don't have blue eyes, I don't have blonde hair. So I think until I got a little older, and so I get more exposed to African literature and African films, and those really I started seeing, because I feel like with reading Western, I didn't really feel like it was something I could write. I don't know if it felt really far off. It felt really distant. But when as a Nigerian, when I read other Nigerians and see that they were writing in a way that I was thinking, it kind of really like, oh yeah, this it was very informative. It was very insightful. It also really shaped the kind of stories I now write as well. So it's like finding a community. It's like finding a community that really like things or have lived the same experiences you have lived, and write those. So you tend to be familiar with their ideas, with their style of writing, and with their thought process. So yeah.
Thank you.
Can you recommend some good Nigerian science fiction?
Yeah, Wole Talabi is really awesome. He has a novel. I will add it to the link. He has a novel coming out soon. Slow Samese. I also add that to the link as well. She has a novel coming out as well, Womb City, with Aaron Books. I'll just find the link. And yeah, I'll add that sometime or send it out sometime. Yeah, but yeah, those are really there are a lot of awesome writers from Nigeria, from the continent at large, and they're really doing amazing work out there.
That would be great if you could get us a list of those that we could put out to the group then, so that we could see some of the names that you're talking about and get some of those books.
Definitely. Yeah.
More books. Yay.
You were talking, mentioning the idea of community and that sort of thing. One of my questions is, you're like a member of some multiple science fiction and fantasy organizations. How are those communities helping support you and helping your development as a writer?
They've been really great. SFWA has been really amazing. Being a part of that has really exposed me to a lot of opportunities, a lot of other writers as well. Yeah, that has been great. The BSFA, the British Science Fiction Association, has been amazing as well. I just really appreciate how these associations have opened up their doors to everybody everywhere. And yeah, it's been this massive opportunity, and I just try to bring in my friends. Oh, this association, you can join them from anywhere in the world. You can just join in. The doors are open. So it's been really great connecting with other writers from everywhere, reading the stories, opportunities, grants. I learned a lot about publishing from the spaces as well. So yeah, the community has the speculative fiction space in general has just been really great and welcoming. And I think even at first, when I really ventured into writing, I started I started thinking towards the literary scene. I didn't really get into it deeply, so I can't really tell you kind of community, but I can't really tell anyway, since I didn't go into it deeply. But speaking for the speculative fiction aspect, I think this space has really been really, really great. But as my growth as a writer, it's been really, really amazing. I'm just glad that I got to be a part of the speculative fiction community. It's been wonderful.
Well, a minute ago, I was making a note, and what I was making a note on was it occurred to me that something I can give you as a little gift that was given to us as a gift was we're associated with Space and Time magazine. Our friend Angela Rico Smith publishes that, and she does a weekly newsletter called Authortunities, which basically talks about all the openings that are available and where to submit to and that sort of thing. So those subscriptions to that newsletter cost like about $50 a year, but she gave me some to gift to people. So I'm going to get that to you personally here as we're able after this, so that you're going to be put on that list so that you can get that and certainly share the information around. I just can only get you the direct subscription. So hopefully you'll find some more places to submit to in that as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that.
Now, also, I saw in your bio that you're an associate editor with Android Press and Apex Magazine and Cast of Wonders. Me personally, I learned more about writing by being an editor than I ever learned about writing trying to write. So I'm really curious as to whether being an editor and I imagine one of your roles is like reading the quote slush pile or the submissions materials. How does being an editor influence you as a writer?
it has been a lot actually, and it has been a massive influence too. Getting to see all this story and getting to be at the back, or at the be on the inside and see the systems and how things work and to navigate all of that. It has been really enlightening, actually. It has been super enlightening. And it has also helped my writing, my growth as a writer as well. So yeah, and all those tons and tons of submissions, reading all of that, and also it's a lot. It's been a lot. It's been a lot. And as a writer, I can also understand or connect to all the other writers. I'm also sending out submissions as well, so I know what it feels like to also be waiting for feedback and the tension that comes with that. And so yeah, it's helped me on both fronts, on being an editor, being a writer. I think I've been able to draw a parallel between the both of them. It's helped. It's been a lot. I might have to step down as an editor for one of those magazines because it does take its toll. But at the same time, it's been a journey, a very enlightening, very insightful journey. Yeah.
Do you, as an editor, then, do you see writers often like making the same mistakes, or after you've read so many stories, it's like all of these guys, failed in a particular way, or they're basically have the same problem conveying their stories? Do you get that sense of things, and does that help you then when you go to write your next story?
Actually, yes, definitely it does. I think if you can be reading a story and there's some, it definitely does. Some story, I feel like, a common thread I have seen is when the story is not, it feels like the story is not complete yet. It feels like the writer paused at some point. And it kind of reminded me that, oh, you also do that as well. And you also do that as well. And that's something you need to work on. If that's an issue here, because I'm not just the other editors too, and when they all point out that, oh, this might be an issue, I'm sure somewhere a bunch of editors are saying the same thing about my story too. So yeah, I think, for example, Cast of Wonders, when we look at stories, there are like 5 of us, and we all look at the stories, we grade the stories, and those pointers of why they feel, oh, this story might not work for us, maybe the story is not really our story, or the story needs more work, and we send back notes to the writers, and we send out notes, and sometimes we ask them, give them an R&R to send back to us. I also, when I go back to my stories too, and I look for those points, I look out for those issues as well. I'll be like, oh, this was an issue, but I can also fix this in my story as well. So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. I'll ask one more question, then we'll see if anybody else has questions for a while. But what's your writing process like? Like, do you start with a scene or a concept or a character? Are you character focused? Or how does the imaginative spark of a particular story, how does that work for you and develop?
I think I've been asked this question so many times. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what the answer is.
That's a good answer right by itself, but keep going.
Yeah, I think it's whatever. Sometimes it could be a scene, sometimes it could be a character. Maybe I've been thinking about this character for a while, and I really want them to be in a story, so I make a story around them. Sometimes it's just a scene, an event. It could just really be anything, really. I don't think I necessarily have a process. It's whenever it comes, whatever comes, I just, at the same time, I still feel I need to be more intentional. I need to be more intentional with my processes. But for now, it's more of, well, I'm just going with it, whatever it is. I'm just going to go with it. Yeah.
Okay, let's open it up. Somebody else, let's give a question here. Just join in.
You mentioned before, Somto, about how you're writing for a world audience more now, and I'm curious to hear like what that looks like for you if you were just writing for a Nigerian audience versus writing for a world audience. What do you think about in your story that might have to be different if you have those different audiences, and how does that inform your writing?
Oh, well, yeah, that's a very good question, actually. Yeah, I think when I'm writing, when I'm taking the world into consideration, but at the same, I tend to be more, if I'm going to write about a particular background I'm not very familiar with, I don't think if I need to be more respectful telling certain stories, to be more respectful telling certain stories, tell stories with care, stories that are not necessarily, I feel like there are stories that are maybe not mine to tell, but need to be told. I need to be very respectful when navigating this kind of story. I need to reach out to people who have those lived experiences that are not mine, and hear their opinions and listen to what they have to say. And when I share my story, if they have, oh, if this doesn't work, this works, try to be as attentive as possible. And yeah, so that's one of my major things I look out for when telling certain kind of story that I feel and might not necessarily be from my background. I tend to be as respectful as possible with them. Yeah.
Do you have plans to write longer works? Do you have novels going in your head?
Sorry?
Do you have novels planned? Are you thinking of writing longer works at all?
I do think about it, and it scares the living daylight out of me. I don't know how to go write novels. It's really massive, and it's really daunting. I think it's a very scary endeavor. And when people ask me about, oh, do you have a novel? I'm like, yeah, in my head, there's a novel somewhere brewing in my head. I don't have anything written down yet, but yeah. My mom always asks me, oh, you're writing now, like, where's your novel? I don't have that yet. But yeah, I do. I think as time goes on, I tend to see I'm always scared of writing longer stuff, but as time goes on, I see myself just doing it. I was recently invited to co-author a novelette. At first, I was like, a novelette, wow! And before I knew it, I was writing 10,000 words. I didn't think that was. I felt that I was just going to stick at 2,000, where it's cozy and safe. But yeah, I see myself writing 10,000 words and 15,000 words. So I guess there is a novel. A novel is going to happen sometime in my future. I'm not sure when or how or if, but yeah, it's brewing. And so I guess we'll see.
You're just not ready for taking that on yet. And honestly, your time sounds a little crazy with doing the reading that you're doing for these other magazines too. That takes time away from your writing as well. So it's like there's limits on time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of following up on what Jane's asking there, do you see yourself, or do you have any feeling for getting into other media? Like, would you like to write essentially teleplays or movie scripts, or would you like to write for computer games? Have you thought about any of the other possible media that also need creative people?
Actually, I'm currently in film school. Yeah, I'm currently in film school and screenwriting and production. And it's been great. It's been really awesome. I recently had a short film out as well. And I think publishing, I also have always had film at the back of my mind as well. And getting to do that now has been really, really great and really, really an eye-opening experience. It's a whole different industry as well. It requires more physical interactions though, as opposed to writing where I can just be inside and just be by myself and write and submit. But with film, now I have to talk to people, and people can be people. So it's a lot. Now it's a lot. I remember I was on a set and people got into a fight. So now it's more out there. It's also an experience. It's also an experience too, a fun experience as well. It's a whole different world, and I'm excited to see where that leads as well. I also recently I got invited to author a comic book. Yeah, so a graphic novel actually. So I'm writing the story, which you get adapted into script. That was also really fun as well. Amongst other stuff, there's also game stuff too going on. So I'm just like, none of them are out yet. Most of them are still in the developmental stages, but I'm just really hopeful and really looking forward to the places they go.
That's exciting to hear, graphic novel, because that's a different form to take. And then the film is so much more collaborative than the writing. That's where you said people are people, but it can be a great experience, but it isn't always a great experience.
Now, is all of that work centered in like science fiction, fantasy, and in like the speculative fiction genre, or is your film work like on a completely different track and about different subjects?
I think for the graphic novel and for the games, it's still speculative fiction. But for the films, the Nigerian film industry hasn't really advanced well enough for fantasy, sci-fi. We did have. I remember growing up, there was fantasy stuff, but it's kind of dwindled down. So now the industry is mostly saturated with comedy flicks, action flicks. But I think it's returning. There was recently a Nigerian filmmaker who has had great success with their fantasy short film, and it's been getting accolades all across the world. It's been really great. So I think. But for my short film, I had to do a literary short film to be on the safe side, because if I had sent in a speculative script, they wouldn't have made the film. So I just really had to play along and give them what I know they wanted. Mm-hmm. But for myself, I think as I grow in the industry and have more footing, I'll come back to doing more. I'll try my best to do more speculative film, because that's really where I have the interest for. So, the industry hasn't gotten to that point yet, but we're getting there. It's still, the speculative scene is still growing. So I think with time, we would get there. Yeah.
Now, what African filmmakers have you found most influential? And are you familiar with Jibril Mambeti? Or is his work, I should say?
No, maybe if I see how if the name is spelled out, I might be able to, but no. But I think CJ Obasi, who adapted into film one of Nnedi Okorafor's short stories, he's doing really amazing work. I should type his name into the chat. He's doing really amazing work with speculative fiction.
Yeah. If you're typing in the chat something, you'll also notice people want a link to your short film. They want to know more.
Oh, okay. I'll try and get that. So yeah, CJ Obasi, he's really doing amazing work. And I've been thinking about reaching out to him. I hope he doesn't think I'm a creep or something, I don't know, but I've been thinking about maybe sending him an email. I don't know. I've not done that before, but I don't know. Yeah. So, but he's amazing. He's really great. I should find the link. Perhaps I'll send out the link maybe to Scott. I'm really having a hard time with my setup here.
We can take care of that for you. More questions, anyone?
I was going to ask if there was a difference in the way you make your approach to a short story versus a poem. I don't know. How do you approach the writing of a poem? Do you sit down and say, I think I'll write a poem now, and then do whatever, or are you inspired by an image or a thought or an emotional something that you go through and say, I need to put this down, this I need to make? Or do you start something and you're writing and you go, wow, I really like these images, I really like this thought process, this is not a story, this is a poem, and you work on it from that angle?
I think for poetry, I usually just start them out. I think I made a tweet about it one time where I let the poem decide for itself what it wants to be. So when I start writing, by the time I get to a certain point, then I can tell what the poem needs to be. It's a bit pretentious, but yeah, it's a whole, yeah. But you know, it's just when I'm in the zen, yeah, whenever I feel like it, or whenever I'm just feeling kind of way about, oh, I need to write, I want to write a poem, I want to have a poem at this point. I usually don't know where the poem is leading or what the theme is necessarily about, but I do know that at some point the poem tends to reveal itself, and the rest of it just comes very easily to me, because at that point I can tell this is where I'm heading, this is where this poem is heading, and the rest of it just comes naturally. So yeah, that's the way I navigate poetry, as opposed to stories, which even after I have decided, oh, I want this character, oh, there's a scene stuck in my head, that isn't enough. I still have to build a world for the story. Having the idea, having the concept is not enough to just kick off the writing. I still have to have something more deeper than that. But for poetry, whatever, it just comes.
So basically, you build the story, but the poem builds itself.
Yeah, that's a perfect description. I'm going to tweet that. So yeah, actually, yeah.
You're welcome to it.
Which, following up on Kevin's question, brings to mind for me, like when you're working on a story, do you feel that you're like a plotter where you're basically creating a structure and then going back to flesh it in, like you know how everything's going to work and now you just have to go flesh in the words and the scenes? Or are you someone who more or less has a scene or some ideas and you're kind of almost sculpting it as you go? You don't really know what the structure is, but you're kind of bringing it to life and seeing what comes out as you work your way through. Which side of the spectrum do you fall on with that?
I think most often not. It might be really faint, or it might not be a strong base, but there's always a structure in my head. I don't really outline it, usually just in my mind, and I just build off of it as I write. So as I'm writing, I'm just borrowing of that structure and I just keep going with it. So yeah, I have the idea, I have a structure in my head, how I feel, and most time it just changes. I just end up with something different at the end of the day. Yeah. So I just needed the structure to start off the work, but almost all my stories have ended up with different endings or different structures at the end of it, like Stars Daring to Shine. That wasn't even the way it started off. It was supposed to be one character, and it was supposed to be shorter, but at the end of the day, it morphed into a more complex story. So yeah, I do have a basic structure in my mind, a basic idea, and I just go on typing and just and go on from there.
Take a slightly different approach on things. Let's talk about social media for a minute. Like, I know you're on Twitter. Are you on other social media platforms? And my question is, you're dealing kind of with a diverse worldwide community, and I wonder how that feels to you. Do you sometimes get into social media spaces where people are being trolls essentially, or have you been very well supported on social media, or just how do you find yourself dealing with Twitter and with social media?
At first, I've never really seen myself as a social media person, but at the same time, I came to learn that it was also necessary. Not, I guess, other writers have done well without having to be on social media, but trying to be more visible. If I wasn't a writer, I probably wouldn't be on social media at all. But I just find myself having to be on there, having to interact with other writers and stuff like that. So I tend to avoid any negative or any toxic spaces on social media. I just try to stay out of it. It can be a lot. It can be really drowning sometimes. But it's just to block off all of that and just focus on what's important. So I tend to tell my silly jokes, which mostly for myself because no one interacts with them. So those are just for me. I just write those jokes for myself. Social media is this whole big world, this whole massive thing. And it's always good to just be around people who are positive, who radiate positive energies, and you can all just, take care of each other in a way, support each other. So that's just the way I navigate the whole thing.
Let's see. Do you see, here's a question for you, because you may have answered part of this previously, but as far as African science fiction, African fantasy, do you see any particular trends or movements in your culture that that may be different from Western culture? We had mentioned the idea of climate change. Is there anything beyond that? And how do you feel like are you basically writing with the trends in your culture, or are you writing just a little bit differently than other writers that are in your sphere? Oh, we can't. You're muted, Somto. Take a look. There you go.
I think, for example, when it comes to writing science fiction, I think most parts of the world, or the Western world, has really, really advanced when it comes to the sciences. And Nigeria, we're still mostly a developing country. So most often than not, I have to write above. I have my influences for science fiction has to come from mostly elsewhere, in a sense. Although science doesn't really belong to any particular people or sects, but at the same time, there's some really interesting developments or trends in other countries, other societies, which haven't really come to this part of the world yet. And I tend to see myself borrowing elements from those influences in other places as well for my stories. Amongst other things too, amongst a lot of other things. So I do see myself trying to, when it comes to trends in the Nigerian space, I think those trends might usually mostly affect literary fiction, but for speculative fiction, fantasy, I think the Nigerian mythology or the Nigerian cultural or the traditional scene has mostly always been the same, even though most of it has been erased by with the advent of Christianity and Islam over here. So there's been a lot of erasure of the culture. But as a writer, a lot of other people are also trying to go back, are trying to find their roots, trying to take back, reclaim those aspects of their lives as well. I won't really say it's a trend, but it's a thing that's happening here where people are, oh yeah, I want to know more about my culture. I want to know more about my tradition. My family is predominantly Christian. I probably won't share my stories with them. I don't know how they will feel about the whole, but I think the elderly ones who got to experience the tradition more in depth would appreciate it. But now my immediate parents, it might be a whole different ballgame for them. So, but at the same time, the younger people, younger writers, they are really like breaking out of the mold, breaking out of the spaces and being like, I want to know more about this. I want to know more about the story. I want to learn more about this. I want this to influence my art, my writing, whatever it is. So, and even names, most of us are, I try not to use my English name more often than not. Yeah, so it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. People are just trying to like go back. So, yeah.
That brings me to a follow-up that I thought of while you were talking there. With people looking back to their roots, to their original cultures, do you see that as in conflict with technological development, or do you think that that's in harmony with technological, as society becomes more technological, as we deal with more AI, as there's more social media, as all the advancements that are happening? Does that threaten that look back at roots, or do you think it can actually help people discover their culture?
I think those are two facets of existence. At the same time, I think there's a thread that can connect them at the same time. I think if people are more accepting of going back to, I want to go back to my culture, I want to go back to, I've been accepting of learning, and people are being more accepting of learning things that have become maybe estranged to their lives. Because right now, there's a cousin of mine who went back to become like an actual traditionalist. He went back to, I haven't gone that far, but he went back, he's now like a priest of a deity, and he's basically been ostracized from our entire community. So, because our community is mostly Christian, and but I think for people to be more accepting of change, I think it goes both ways. Even for advancement as well in the sciences, we tend to see. I remember back growing up here, and when things are advancing at exponential rates in other countries, for some reason, people here will be like, "Oh no, this advancement is bad. It's not good. It has some, I don't know. There's always some pushback to it." So I think it's mostly the idea that there's a concept in people's head of not being more accepting of things. So if someone is basically accepting of going back to finding their roots, I believe that they're also going to be open to advancements in other aspects of their lives. So yeah, that's the way I try to view it.
That sounds like fascinating material to craft stories from.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay. I think we're getting near the end here. Certainly, anybody who wants to ask questions can do that. I will ask the typical question that you ask all writers. What advice would you give to aspiring science fiction writers, particularly those from underrepresented backgrounds?
I would say that their dreams are valid and very achievable, and that their voices deserve to be heard and they deserve to be seen and they should just keep going at it, keep doing the work you're doing, putting in the work, sending out the stories to literally everywhere, just send it out. Someone out there just cannot wait to read your story. Someone out there can't wait to be inspired by your work, by your voice. So you definitely need to have that story out there. Yeah.
Thank you. Follow-up question. I see Susan clapping there. Follow-up questions. Any last questions or things people would like to ask or talk about with Somto?
Any chance you're coming to any big conventions like Worldcon?
I plan on attending the one Worldcon is supposed to happen next year in the UK. I definitely plan on coming to that. And,
I want to go. Okay.
Yeah, I have plans of attending that. And yeah, I think that's what I have in mind for now. I think I will see how next year goes. Yeah, and I do intend on coming to the US next year for Clarion 24. I got my visa recently, so I should be in the US and then in the UK for Worldcon as well. So yeah.
Yay.
One of the questions that had passed through my brain as we were sitting here and talking and listening and talking was, have you traveled much outside of your personal sphere? Have you traveled outside of Nigeria? And if you have, has it informed your writing with the idea of seeing the operations of cultures other than your own?
Yes, I have traveled. I was in the UK. I was in Wales and also England back in September, and for Milford SF, and then for FantasyCon as well. And it was an experience. It was terrifying. All these new people, these new places, and I remember when I was in London, and everyone just keeps walking. Everyone just loves walking for some reason. Just walk everywhere, and they had all their sneakers, and at one point I almost passed out, but but they just enjoy walking so much. It's so healthy lifestyle. So it has been very enlightening, traveling and meeting other people, meeting new people, and seeing the way they live, the things they eat. And I remember when I was at Wales, and the biome was just this. I had seen it in television, but seeing it up close, seeing the way they lived, seeing the biome, the animals, it was just really new. It was so exciting. It was so beautiful. I couldn't tell if it was beautiful because I was seeing for the first time, or if it was actually just beautiful. I couldn't differentiate the both of them. But it was an exciting experience, and I look forward to really traveling more, meeting more people, more cultures, more environments. Yeah, it's daunting, but yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we certainly wish you all the best. It's been an absolutely fantastic session here talking to you. It was tremendous being able to meet you, and hopefully we'll have you back again at some point. And at DreamForge, we look forward to seeing your stories and submissions. We'll be opening either late summer or early fall. We wish you all the success in the world. You seem to be doing really well, and we look forward to your future success.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This was so much fun. I'm just so glad to have been a part of it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much.